Hey guys, Cher here, and we made it! We made it to 2019. See, it wasn't so hard, wasn't it? Okay, that was a joke. A kinda cruel, sick joke. So, for my first video of the year, I decided that I was finally going to get to this book review that I've been wanting to get to, but there was something called work that had me distracted. Also, my videos on the top 13 best and worst songs of 2018 are not done yet. This book I won a physical copy of on Goodreads, and as I was going through this book, it was definitely worthy of a talk about, because this is a book that is going to be released this year, and I'm one of the first people to actually read this copy, so I am glad to express my opinions on it for if you guys want to buy this book yourselves, when it does come out, of course. And that book is Saving Dorothy by Elizabeth Letts. Now, before I get started on this book, I was a little misled by what type of genre this is supposed to be, because according to Goodreads and pretty much any other site, it was called a fictional novel. And I mean, by looking at the cover, it kind of looks like a fictional novel. But then I read the author's notes at the front of the book, and it stated that it's written as fiction, but it's basically a biography of sorts. Well, not a full biography, kind of a full biography. I call it a memoir in, how many pages is this? Like, over 330. And with all that said and done, I was like, what type of, like, memoir biography would this be about, to be exact? Well, I thought the title and the little, scene in the background might be a giveaway, but this is actually recalling the childhood and marriage of the wife of the author who wrote the original Wizard of Oz. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting what her name was. I know it started with an M. Her name is Maud, and she had a pretty interesting life, according to this book. From what I've read, her mother was a suffragette, and if you don't know what that is, that was basically a woman who fought for women's rights back in this time period, because she was, like, born in the late 1800s, but then she goes into her adulthood in the early 1900s. So that is, yeah, definitely around the time that women's rights was going on with Susan B. Anthony and all that. And with her mother being a suffragette, Maud did not have the easiest life, because basically if you were the child of a suffragette, or if you were a suffragette, you will be ridiculed by the American society, because there were still a lot of people who thought women voting, that is completely and utterly ridiculous. And basically, if you try to fight for women's right to vote, you will be an unmarried maid and you will have the worst life of your life. And for Maud's case, that is actually not true, because when she meets the author of The Wizard of Oz in his younger days, Frank Baum, he actually found Maud to be very interesting, because Maud is basically not a doormat at all. She was never a doormat. Except, well, because, first of all, her mother was trying to lead her down the road of back when feminism was back in the day, that her mother pushed Maud to get a degree in college, because not a lot of women got degrees either that much of worth or at all back in these days, because women go to college to get married. They don't go to get degrees. And Maud was about to get a equivalent of an English literature degree, but instead, when she met Frank, who was an actor, who was studying, like, acting and all that types of stuff at college, she decided that she's going to marry him and not finish school, that he was going to finish. And she was just going to be a regular housewife, and this angers her mother to no end. But enough on the past bit. Basically, the crux of the book is most of it kind of takes place back and forth between the present day, which is 1937, when the Wizard of Oz movie was in production, and it goes back to the past of Maud's childhood, adulthood, and all that fun stuff while her husband was still alive, basically before the movie was even considered. And basically what happens in the present scenes is Maud goes to the film studio of where Wizard of Oz is being filmed, and she actually does meet the director of the movie. She meets the actors, especially, I don't know why I'm blanking out on her name, because, oh my god, I love this actress, and Dorothy was like one of my favorite characters of film. Judy Garland. I am stupid. I had to look down at the book to remember that her name was Judy Garland. I talk about her all the time. Why did I black out? I don't know. But Maud and Judy have a wonderful relationship in this book, this retelling of this point in Maud's life. She basically learns all of the good things that happened during the production, and even the bad things that were coming into light more presently of what happened in the movies back in these days, especially the torture that Judy had to go through in order to portray herself as this character of Dorothy, who was supposed to be portrayed as younger, but Judy was 16 when this movie was being made, and the original Dorothy of the book was supposed to be like a little girl, like a little girl. Not like 5 years old, but maybe like, I don't know, 10, 11 years old. So, Maud thought, like, how the original studio making the movie was not exactly, up to what her husband originally, created. Because Maud knows everything about her husband's ideas for Wizard of Oz. And the reason why she was brought to the studio was she was going to help the Wizard of Oz movie come to life. Like, however, not all of her criticisms are taken lightly, because there was a point where Maud sees that they're painting the Emerald City set, and it's entirely green, but then Maud goes insane because she's like, no, the Emerald City is actually not green, it's white. It's the citizens who wear their glasses that are making it look green. Like, the city is actually white. The wizard made these people wear glasses that their lenses are green, so everything looks green. It was like the people who were making the movie did not understand what she was talking about. But then I was reading this scene like, yeah, I agree with Maud on this one. Did you even read the original book? So, yeah, even like discrepancies of the book version and the movie version have even occurred back in days when film was first being interpreted. And trust me, I've done research on book versus movies for a long time, so I understand how Maud feels entirely about having the movie almost butcher the original book. So, if you guys haven't, like, been listening to me ramble because you probably had me on the background, which is fine, this book, Finding Dorothy, gave me a lot of Saving Mr. Banks vibes, because the process of, first of all, going from present to the past to have a book being interpreted into the movie are the same. The only thing that's different is that Maud is not exactly picky about certain movie things, and that we actually get to how Maud is kind of Dorothy, or how the Dorothy character was even created through Maud's flashbacks, which I actually found pretty interesting yet tragic at the same time, because like I said, her life was not as easy as we all kind of assume, because we thought, oh, Frank Baum, like, he was made to be this, like, very rich author, but in all honesty, like, it wasn't even like that until the book was actually published and sold. Like, I don't think we ever, like, thought about, like, trials and tribulations of a certain person before they get famous. Because sometimes their lives are probably even harder than most of us. Like, part of it was a rags to riches story, because Frank is trying his best to be the perfect husband. Like, he wanted to give everything that Maud wanted, even though Maud made the sacrifice of not getting a college degree, which, again, angered her mother entirely, considering her mother is a suffragette and was a suffragette until she passed away. Which, I admire her mother in that regard. At the same time, she was pushing Maud towards almost unrealistic expectations, at least kind of for the time period. Except for the English degree thing, I really thought the English degree was a good way. I mean, that probably would have been me if I was Maud's mother back in that time period. But there was, like, I don't know how to put it all into one summary, because this book took a lot of twists and turns that I had no idea about Maud or even Judy Garland herself. Like, Elizabeth said that I am so entirely sorry. I got completely distracted in what I was going to say. But what I was going to say was, Elizabeth Letts did her research when it came to, what to do to write this book that was, or, like, it's published as a piece of fiction, but everything about it that I read, it felt real. Like, she researched, the bombs, and she researched what Frank was like, what Maud was like, what her relationships with, Judy Garland were, with people who were making the movie were. Like, I could tell that she did her research on this, and she, like, made the characters, like, fleshed out like, even though they were real people, she fleshed them out to have developments, to have wants, to have, desires, to have dreams, to have goals. Like, this felt like a movie in its own right, and if this ever does get a movie, I want to be able to live to watch it, because as much as I loved, Saving Mr. Banks, I think this has become one of my favorite books of all time. I was reading this book, like, a little bit when I first got it, but then work happened, and then, over one weekend, I was going to New York with my family to see Anastasia on Broadway, God bless Cody Simpson, and of course on the car ride, which was gonna be like 5 hours, I had to entertain myself in some way, so I decided I was gonna bring this book in the car, and I needed to entertain myself for, like, the last, I don't know, hour, because I read this book from beginning to end without stopping. Well, kind of stopping, but I did not want to stop reading. It was that intriguing. I wanted to finish it so bad, and if I could have read it again, I probably would have. And maybe I will somewhere down the line, because I love this book, and I cannot wait for everyone else to read it when it gets published. So, in all honesty, I think I can give this book a pretty high, well, not pretty high, because it's a complete score, 10 out of 10. It's just a very intriguing read. I just loved reading about Maud Baum and her life. I liked learning about, like, the backstory of her husband Frank, and I just love the little connection that Maud had with Judy Garland. It just seems sincere, because it's a 16-year-old girl with a woman, and I think it was said she was in her 70s by the time the movie was being made. It's just one of those books that tugs at your heartstrings, makes you laugh, makes you cry, but then makes you so happy at the same time. Like, I highly recommend that you read this when you get the chance. With that said, if you guys liked this little video, I recommend that you smack that little like button, and if you guys get the book by the time this comes out, which is February 12th, or if you guys have read it, if you're a Goodreads giveaway winner like I am, make sure you share your comments at the bottom of this video. Or if you have some arguments with what I just said, even though you haven't read the book, like, you can put that down in the comments too. I'm Cait, and it's been real. Ciao!